Sean Campus, welcome in to our Sunday Strength. The question today is what does my or why does my partner always blame me? All right, so there's something that I do in therapy a lot is we end up trying to change questions because there's a certain way that um, we think that creates different kinds of outcomes, and so a little bit of that question is valid because you might be experiencing that scenario where somebody, and you know what, to clarify before I move on, um, this we're going to talk about it in the context of marriages, but this really could be like um, friendships. It could be um, child parent relationships. Like there could this can really happen in a lot of different ways, and so I want you guys to be able to use it that way. Is that like sometimes there's one person in a relationship that may blame that other person frequently, and so we want to talk about why that happens, and then the more powerful question that we really should be asking. Okay, so um, let's start with the reason that we get blamed for things. So there's two reasons. The first thing is you might not be doing what you're supposed to be doing. Like that's probably the easiest thing. And matter of fact, you could probably pay a little bit attention to how you feel on the inside and your life and the things that you're doing, and that's the easy. That would be the easy part. The second thing is though that I think is worth us being able to know the reason that somebody would blame you is because of all the hardship that they're experiencing. So as they experience hardship, the best way sometimes to do things in that moment isn't it's not known. Like if I'm afraid of something, if things are going hard in my life, I'm not going to be thinking about like what's the best way for me to get out of this situation. I'm going to scratch and claw to try to get out of the scenario that I think that's happening that's hard for me, right? So the your partner or the person who's blaming you is more afraid and worried about the experience that they're going to have if they're not able to put that in a different place. So while we're here, let's flip this a little bit because I know both people will watch this. There will be two people. There will be a person who gets blamed, but then there'll also be the person who's doing the blaming, right? There couldn't be something that gives our power away more than doing a blame scenario. Okay. And so if we are doing the blaming in the situation, realize what your fears are and what your hardship really is, um, versus putting that on somebody else. Okay. And so that actually gives us the answer. So let's go back to the person who's asking the question, why does my partner always blame me? Well, when somebody's doing a hardship scenario, the goal is to try to ease things up by finding a way out, by getting a quick solution, by finding somebody else who's not doing their thing that they need to do. And so it happens that way. That's not the most useful question. Why my partner blames me is not the most useful question. The most useful question long term is really, what do I need to be doing in my relationship that reduces the idea that we have blame as a part of our relationship? And here's the first thing. There's this old saying that I remember being taught early on, which is um, it's by Hemingway, and he says, it's your fault if you're lucky, right? And that saying means that in life, there are not a lot of things that really are on us that we don't have control over. But when we can find those things that belong to us, when we can say, like, okay, that was my fault, that means we have an opportunity to make a difference and make a change. What if that was the culture in your relationship? What if instead of finding the reason that things are happening in a difficult way, we took responsibility in a different kind of way in our relationship, right? What if we were doing our work to try to get better and find the things that we can say like that's my fault, right? So what are the three things that we fight about? And this will help us to understand like where can things go wrong. We fight about three things: significance, control, and abandonment. None of those are bad, right? There's buzzwords that will make those bad, but those are not bad things. They are needs that we kind of fight about. So if my partner is having a hard time and they go to blaming, and I put my forearms up, what do you think is going to happen? Either they're going to keep swinging or they're going to walk away, and we're definitely not connected. But if my partner is blaming and I can understand like that comes from significance control or abandonment versus me looking at the blame and say, here you go again, right? If I can do that, then it switches the culture in the relationship, right? How fast? I don't know how fast it's going to switch it. You both have to really work at that, but it's going to switch it over eventually, right? So if I can look more at what actually is going on underlying versus what's being presented, then it changes everything inside of our conversation. There's another saying that says hurt people, right? And so if I'm hurt, it might be harder for me to walk away from scenarios where somebody is doing something wrong in my life, or where I feel like something is being caused to slow my life down or to somehow make a hardship in my life, right? So that that's something that we could actually wrap our arms around versus us trying to fight that person constantly. Okay, and so the challenge here is to ask your question or change around what it is that you're trying to do. And so what you're really trying to do, and what I want you guys to be able to focus on, is switching the culture of your relationship so that it's not a blame scenario, right? There's certain responsibility that you could take, but sometimes it really isn't your fault. And if it's not your fault, what are you going to try to search for in your relationship? Going back at the person who has blamed you isn't necessarily useful, but it is useful to say, look, I'm with you on the hurt pieces that you're feeling, or I can recognize it, or I want to hear. Maybe I don't even know yet. I just want to hear what's going on, right? And so it's a really important shift to make. It's a really difficult shift to make, and the reason it's difficult is because when we're getting attacked, that's, the blame concept is the idea that somebody's saying that we're not good enough, that we're not doing things right. So, those things are accidental insults and minimizations, and we can feel that more than anything. And so we end up responding that way too. Um, but I want to see something different, right? So instead, if we don't pay attention to the words and we say, look, I know somebody that I'm loving is hurting and they're in a hard place, let me go with that culture building, and then we can change what's going on in our relationship. And so what does our relationship become? Well, it becomes more of a culture of being able to ask questions, being able to be curious, being able to express the hardship, being able to express what's on our mind and the reason and the ways that it got there. So we're sharing openly. And when I feel supported, when I feel connected, when I feel um, heard, when all those things happen, if we go back to the significance, control, and abandonment, now I don't feel like I'm powerless. So I don't need to blame, right? Now I don't feel like I'm not important, right? Now I don't feel like somebody's going to leave me. I feel connected. And so it's a huge advantage for us to be able to reframe what it is that is going on in our mind when it comes to being blamed. It's less of an advantage for us to stick on this conversation. Sometimes we ask questions like, why does my partner always blame me? We ask those questions and it accidentally turns us into a victim, right? And when we're moving that way, that's going to create something different in your relationship than the culture that we just talked about, right? So see if you could switch your question around. This won't be everybody's favorite answer. I know that, because really, if somebody blames us, we want to find the thing that's wrong with them and be able to say something's wrong with them. That's why we're doing the things that we do. And whatever it is, we're looking for something wrong with them, just the same way that they look is something wrong with us, right? So what happens whenever that goes on? Well, our relationship at that point in time isn't being worked on; it's deteriorating, right? And so your goal here is switch the culture in your relationship to being curious, to being connected, to making your person important enough to know what's going on with them, and ask those questions and be willing to listen to those. The more that you can do that, you probably will reframe your question, and that question that you have about why your partner is always blaming is answered and it's not needed anymore. All right, you guys, enjoy your Sunday, and we will talk to you soon. Um, yeah, I hope everybody's doing good. Take care. Bye now.